Thank you very much. And welcome, Pam. I promise to be a little gentler on you than I've been on poor Julianne over the past 3 years. I'm a high maintenance person. Well, welcome to many familiar faces. And if you've gotten over the shock that I cut my really long hair and now it's really short. So, okay, we're done with that. Oh my God, what happened to you? So I am, as you know, the climate lady. And that in the world with so many problems, you have to pick one or two that you can work with. And I chose working with climate and climate literacy, climate engagement, and climate advocacy. And so it's my hope through the next 6 weeks that the speakers that we have, all of whom are UF professors with the exception of myself, all are bringing a different angle to you about the climate situation and what can be done. And I'm hoping that some of you will be inspired to take what you learn, talk about it with your family, your friends, your groups here at OCAMIC, your groups at church, pretty much everywhere. And you'll notice that I'm wearing a t-shirt. When I taught before, I was wearing business clothes. I'm now the sole employee in Gainesville for the CLEO Institute, and CLEO stands for Climate Leadership Engagement Opportunities. And if you said, what does that mean, Ellen? I would give you one sentence. It means I am creating climate conversations in every kitchen in Alachua County. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm thrilled that we have Dr. Malcolm Sanford, Mr. B, Dr. B, as our first speaker today. Because who doesn't love bees? Don't raise your hand. Who doesn't love bees? He's got a curriculum vitae as long as the path from here to the outside. But the things that I want to highlight for you are that he was born in Miami and has lived in Texas, Georgia, and Florida, and many countries in between. He's a man of service. He was in the Peace Corps in Ecuador teaching, believe it or not, primary school in Spanish. He served in the US Navy. He is highly educated, going from zoology to international management to geography and then entomology. And he's going to talk a lot about, that's bugs, if you didn't know. Okay. And he continues his service now as an active member of the Kiwanis in Gainesville. And he is a speaker with Climate Reality Project. And you'll notice he's got a Climate Reality Project t-shirt and I've got a CLEO t-shirt, but we met in Climate Reality Project. So that's Dr. Sanford, and I'm not letting him talk yet. First slide. I wanted to build a tiny bit of basic background on what's going on. Yep, please. Oh, sorry, next slide. So the series that we're leading is called Is It Hot in Here or Is It Me? And I'm going to introduce it with that. Okay, next slide. And if you can find, this is, right, next slide. That's it. But no, not play it again. Next slide. That's Ellen Buxtell. She's a High Springs friend of mine. She's a folk singer. Of course, she's writing about human thermostats, mainly female, but our thermostat is broken on planet Earth. And I want to point out to the blue marble, you've seen this image 100 times. And what you don't see, next slide, is what's going on underneath the very, very thin blanket that covers us. And so I wanted to give you some data that you can use with people that you talk to, because I want a climate conversation in your kitchen. So this is a 30-year period, Northern Hemisphere, that's us, summer temperatures, and this is a baseline. Baseline is you start from a point, and then we're going to see how things change over time. So you can see that the blue section is cooler than average temperatures. The white is average temperatures, and the red is warmer than average temperatures during that 30-year period. I was born in 1959. Some of you were born about then or maybe a little earlier. So it kind of covers the weather that we grew up with, the climate we grew up with. Next slide, please. Uh-oh, clicker. Okay, oh, it beeped. It did it. Yeah. How did it know to do that? You weren't here. Oh, you've got the clicker. Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so the green line marks the baseline. We're now 1990 to 2000. Remember Y2K? Notice what's happening on that graph. I'm assuming you noticed that the blue got a lot smaller, the white stayed about the same, the red got a lot bigger. And do you see something different? Yeah, you see the dark red, extremely hot, showing up for the first time. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Pam. This is 2010 to 2020. Notice again, hardly any cooler than average, lots of heat and lots of extremely hot days. And we live here in Gainesville. And if you're going to ask me what's the worst climate impact we have in Gainesville, I would say the heat. And there's a good book that just came out called The Heat Will Kill You First by Jeff Goodell. And it's worth reading because you really, really, really want to be careful when you're out walking or biking, taking your dog, gardening, whatever. Okay, next slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, okay. This is another way to look at the change in temperature besides the graph. So we're starting in 1850, kind of when the Industrial Revolution was 100 years old, and we're ending in 2023. Obviously, blue is cool and red is hot. And you can see that the last 5 to 7 years are hotter, 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 hotter. Next slide. And this animation, and we'll play this one twice, Pam, because it goes fast. Watch the bottom timeline. Can you go back one slide? Can you go backwards one? Sure. Okay. Great. And then click on it one more time. Watch the bottom for the timeline. In the 1800s, you can see summer, winter, summer, winter. Winter is blue, summer is yellow. Watch what's happening over time. See if you can isolate Florida off to the left. And here we are in 2019. It's not hot in here. Excuse me, it isn't you. It is hot in here. This is data-driven science, and all of these things are available on the internet. And if you really were interested, send me a note and I'll make sure you get an access to the source material so you can talk to people about, you know what? It's real. This climate thing is real and it's bad and it's urgent. And this class is designed to give you information and inspiration. So one more slide and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sanford. Why is it getting hotter? Because our Earth is surrounded with a ribbon of blue, a thin ribbon of blue. And where's Bob Bernstein? Because he had this great analogy, and Bob, I have stolen it wherever you are. If you held an apple in your hand and it was the Earth, the ribbon that keeps us in a Goldilocks temperature is as thin as the skin on the apple. And we are polluting that skin to the tune of 162 million tons of carbon pollution every single day. We have to stop. And with that basic science lesson over, let's have some fun with bees.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little bit of light. Can you hear me? Usually I don't need these things, but we'll check it out anyway. Okay. Right. Well, thanks for inviting me. What is it about honeybees that sings to me? This lady up here was singing. Wasn't she singing about bees? Good. A lot of things sing to me about bees. In 1972, I contracted honeybee fever. Anybody here got that? There's one guy back there. I see him. He has this honeybee fever. I can tell. Look at that right there. This is a disease, what some call an addiction, actually. A lingering wish to learn as much as possible about the social insect known as the honeybee, otherwise named scientifically as Apis mellifera. This happenstance, this honeybee problem that I have, honeybee fever, caused me to shift my master's thesis in geography while at the University of Georgia. Don't tell anybody. Okay. Yeah, it caused me to shift my master's degree from geography, which is what I was involved in, Latin American geography, basically, from geography to the fishing industry in Mexico, that's what I was at. And so as a consequence, it caused me to shift my master's degree from geography to beekeeping. Well, why is that? Well, it turned out that when I went to do some beekeeping, kinds of research in fisheries, there wasn't much data on that at the Yucatan Peninsula at that time. So when I went up to visit Yucatan, I found out there wasn't much information about fish, but there's a lot of information about beekeeping at that time. That was the largest beekeeping area in the world, shipping lots and lots of honey, mainly to New York City by, again, the name of R.B. Wilson. So that was the first step in my training, going from fisheries to beekeeping and having bee fever, of course. And so this transition to my eventual employment as cooperative extension specialist in beekeeping with Apis mellifera at the University of Florida. I did that for 20 years and caused me to write a book, which I'm really happy about. I brought a copy along. If you want to see, here it is. Let me pass it around. People can take a look at it. Stories Guide to Keeping Honeybees. And of course, it's available on the World Wide Web and other places, but very interesting book about beekeeping in general. And so now that I'm retired, basically, I'm about talking to people about bees, as I still always have for my professional life, but also looking at marketing my book and other kinds of issues. Okay, let's see the next slide. Okay, although differing in their biology, both humans and honeybees are social organisms. That's kind of, I think, that's where this bee fever came from a little bit. We're social organisms, and honeybees are social organisms. We have some of the same kind of, we're obviously one's an insect, and we're a mammal, a little bit of a different deal, but nevertheless, the idea is the social part is what kinds of hones us and keeps us together. Now, please play the video. Okay, well, that gives you some idea of the situation I just mentioned. The promise of this presentation is to understand how humans and honeybees are affected by a warming world, because we definitely are, as Helen so eloquently showed this morning. We're getting pretty hot. We're pretty hot here, and bees are pretty hot as well, and we're both in the same situation. So this phenomenon is now agreed by most scientists to be caused by humanity's injection of large amounts of what we're calling greenhouse gases. 2 greenhouse gases. And our goal here is to explore what we can do individually and collectively to prevent further global warming or heating by reducing the emissions of these particular gases. Now, humans and honeybees require atmospheric oxygen for their life processes. Without this critical activity that regulates temperature, reproduction, and other things, these biological functions result in production of carbon dioxide. So every time we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Same way with bees, they're breathing in, they're breathing out in a different situation, but they're doing the same thing. And carbon dioxide is then released into the air. Another important consideration is what's affecting humans and honeybees is known as phenology. Phenology is a kind of a seasonal timing of biological events. And they include migration, egg laying, hibernation, plant growth, all kinds of things that are going on in plants and animals, regulated by what? Climate. Climate is the regulation for it. This is the phenology. And in a warming world, this phenology, this climate, can affect environment in many ways, including food shortages, lack of important nutrients, other consequences of being out of synchrony with the climate. And of course, that's what we're talking about here. Climate change. What we're used to is before the phenology before is now different than the phenology is now. And it's particularly important in honeybees, for interestingly enough, is that this ultimate change in phenology is causing them to have to deal with the fact that they only have 2 things that they eat: pollen from flowers and nectar from flowers. And if you don't have any flowers, you got a problem. You got no pollen and you got no nectar. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Oh, we already had it. It's already up there. Okay, there it is. Okay. Okay, so beyond respiration, humans have injected into the atmosphere large surpluses of the 2 greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide being one, particularly carbon dioxide by burning coal, oil, gas, and other materials. These act as a heat-trapping blanket, warming the air, land, and sea of the globe, basically. This is revealed in this famous chart. I love this chart. This is called the hockey stick. I guess everybody, if you're in Florida, you don't know too much about hockey sticks, maybe. But as time goes on, well, a lot of people are actually playing hockey now. When I was young, all my relatives lived in the Twin Cities. We used to go up there for Christmas time. Why was that? We had to play hockey. We could skate. I lived in Houston, Texas. Nobody skated. Nobody played hockey. But we know now that this hockey stick's a very interesting area. So this famous hockey stick, you'll notice that there's a couple of lines on this thing. There's the kind of the blue line. The blue line is carbon dioxide. Blue line has generally been flat around from 1800. That's what Ellen already talked about, the Industrial Revolution going forward, and only ticking up in the last century, while the temperature has been more variable with carbon dioxide levels. But importantly, of course, if you see on this line here, these 2 lines intersect as part of the blade of the hockey stick. This signals a huge temperature increase, which again, Ellen already showed you, really, basically. And as this temperature, am I hearing something? I got a hearing aid on, so sometimes I have a problem. Anyway, so this hockey stick signals a temperature increase on planet Earth. And that temperature on this particular slide shows that we're right at about 14 to 14.5 degrees Celsius or centigrade. Doesn't sound like too much, but if you translate that into Fahrenheit, you're talking about 50 degrees. 50-degree increase in temperature. So as a consequence, that's a serious issue. And again, we've already seen why that is when she talked about that. So that was carbon dioxide. The next gas we talk about is methane. Methane is also a greenhouse gas. It's a primary component of natural gas. emitted from a variety of human influence and natural sources, including landfills, gas flares, rice farming, cattle farming, and most interesting to me, melting permafrost. Now in Florida, we don't have much of that, melting permafrost. In fact, I don't think we have any permafrost, period. But this turns out to be one of the biggest sources of this methane in the Arctic area, which is been frozen for millions of years and not available to the atmosphere. But as the temperature rises, as the ice melts, the methane rises to the top. And you get this incredible addition to what is going on with carbon dioxide is also methane. So these two gases are extremely important. And again, the concept of this whole thing is to talk a little bit about those two gases. Let's go to the next slide. Let's look at these sources here. Can you see them? These are summarized the sources of carbon dioxide and methane. They include agriculture. I don't know if you can say. There's my pointer. Okay. Oil drilling. There it is. Coal mining. Thawing of the permafrost. Garbage landfills. Forest and crop burning. There she goes. Okay. Transportation, of course. And industrial processes. Very nice. Thank you, dear. Let's hear it for her. So there's a lot of different sources of this. So there's a graphic. Let's look at the next graphic. Next graphic shows the sources, high sources of these particular emissions in a little different way. This is about these are there. There are about 20 high impact actions. The idea behind this is that it's supposed to show what individuals can start doing to reduce the number of these emissions of these two gases. Okay, and this particular one shows about 20 of them. Can't read most of it, but what's important, what's interesting about it is the first two, the top two. You can't read it, but you can tell you what it is. One is reducing food waste. Duh, really? Reducing food waste turns out to be one of the most important things in impact ways you can keep these gases from going into the atmosphere. And the other is consuming plant-rich diets. In other words, what should people be eating? No meat, less meat, vegetables. That's the idea. So consuming plant-rich, I love this, plant-rich diets. That means you're trying to be instead of a carnivore, what are you going to be? An omnivore, or even beyond that, herbivore. That's right. No. Okay. So anyway, so it's interesting that the top two things on this 20 high impact actions have to do with food. And that's, again, the reducing the food waste and consuming plant-rich diets in terms of dealing with those particular areas. Now, the others are divided into different major sectors. Food is about 12.4%. Energy to get around and do things, 8.6%. Travel, 2.8%. Waste, about 1.3%. So again, that's an important thing to look at in terms of what we can do individually. That's what I said was the promise of this, to try to give you an idea of what you can do. So when you go home, what's the first thing you can do is become a vegetarian. Duh. Well, if you look, let's look at we had TV here and see what's up on the screen, for making money and for going out to eat and whatever. Vegetables sometimes aren't too big about that. There's other kinds of things. What? Meat. We have the meats. Ever seen that? We have the meats. Well, this has to do with the fact that if you can get rid of the meats, you have a much better climate in a sense. Wouldn't be quite as hot. Okay, so the types of actions then in this particular situation are what you look at is you're going to do individual. So what Ellen and I talked about what I do. She liked what I did, but I'm happy to be liked. We're all happy about that. But she said, what do you do? I said, well, what should I be doing? And so I said, well, okay, here's what I'm doing. Reducing driving. Okay. I got a wonderful partner that I live with. She has her own car. I gave up my car. That's it. I'm not driving my car. Now, I'll drive her car on occasion, but not often. Not often. Because the next thing I've gone to is bumming rides. If I can get a ride bum somewhere, I will do it. And I'm doing that proactively all the time. So sometimes people say, why don't you go over to this particular area? We're having a little kind of a function or an action over here with people. Can you come? I said, yeah, how am I going to get there? Well, you can drive. No. How can I get there? Well, you can drive. No. How can I go? Well, so-and-so, do you have a car? Can I go with you? Yeah. So this is what I'm doing all the time. I'm basically consciously getting rid of that situation. And in order to do that, how do I get around? Bicycles. Bicycles are a wonderful way to get around, especially in Gainesville. It's a fabulous place. My favorite activity. And my sister pointed this out too, that one of the things that's nice about bicycles is that even though it doesn't appear to be the case, when you're riding along on a sidewalk, on a bicycle, what do you think is the most active thing you're doing in terms of your sociability with other people? You're actually interacting with them. It's something called a weak link. And if you're doing it all the time, people, if you're very conscious of it, you go around, you see people, oh, yeah, hi. Now that's a weak link. This person, I said hi, they said hi. Now I don't know them. They don't know me. They're a weak link. They're not a strong link. I'm not going to marry them. Whatever, that'd be the strong link. But the weak links are everywhere. If you start looking out and you see, and it's interesting because when you're riding a bike, of course, all these other people are driving cars. Now, one of the things in order to make a weak link is you got to get people's eyes. You got to get their eyes on you. Okay. Well, they got windows up. Sometimes you can't see them, but you can wave to them like that, kind of thing. So that happens as well. But in spite of the fact that they have their windows up and you can wave to them, you can catch their eyesight. That's your weak link. And that turns out to be, I think, a very important part of your reality in general and in your life. Local buses. Anybody here rode the local buses? What bus? What bus out here? I don't know which one is out here. I ride the 43. 43 goes from Santa Fe College down to the Shands Hospital, right through middle of town. Pretty nice place. That's the number 43. The 5 bus. 5 bus is easy to go to. Oaks Mall into downtown to the best station. There's the number 10 bus. There's several different number 8 bus. There are buses around you can ride. And it's worth studying and seeing. There's an app you can look at and see what's going on there. And so you can ride buses. That's what I'm doing. I'm paying attention to food purchases and waste, trying to do some composting. I'm trying to eliminate recycle plastic. Now, this to me is the biggest, this is the biggest challenge. What do you do with plastic after you've used it? How do you get rid of it? Well, you can't get rid of it. You have to actually do something to get rid of it. So what I do is I collect all the plastic in a certain place, and then I try to get it to go someplace to get rid of it. Now, my go-to place now is Publix grocery stores. If you go and look at Publix, most of them, the ones I'm involved with, they got a thing there that says plastics. You can put your plastics in there. But what happens to the plastics you put in the Publix slot? Nobody can tell me. So I think I'm doing a good job, but I need more information. And every time I go places, I ask the same information. And yet that's not out there, the information about it specifically. What happens to that plastic that I spent a lot of time and money and whatever, and I rode my bicycle over to the store. I put it in the slot. Where's it going and what's it doing? I can't find out that information. Okay, now that's the singular. Those are singular kinds of activities for how to attempt to, again, reduce the emission of these two greenhouse gases. Then there's the other thing called collective solutions. Collective solutions are maybe a little more difficult, but you get more use out of them perhaps. And so we have a list of collective solutions you can do, and we're going to put that in here. And so let's look at some collective solutions pretty quickly. Keep coal, oil, and methane in the ground. Electrify with renewables. Leave old growth trees in place. Don't cut them down. Use regenerative agriculture, which is coming along. There are more and more people doing that. Support governmental initiatives. Sponsor programs such as the Climate Reality Project. So I got this shirt on. And there's got a lot of places, drawdown.org, which had those 20 parts that I just showed you before, the individual things. So you have the collective, you have the individual things you can do, and you have the collective things. These are two separate kinds of areas that you can look at and see what's going on in my area with these particular kinds of situations in terms of lowering, what we're lowering? These gases. Keep these gases out of the atmosphere. Then, of course, you can do your house. Everybody's got a house, or most people do. But even if you don't, in some cases, you can do things by rehabilitating your house so it's more energy efficient. And so that is happening now with what we were calling the Inflation Reduction Act. This is the next slide here. This is something that the Biden administration, hey, let's hear it for the Biden administration. Hey, anybody go to vote? Anybody going to vote? Anybody worried about an 80-year-old as a president? What's going on? I mean, but anyway, the Biden administration is responsible for this, and this is taking a lot of energy in terms of trying to do something within your own house. There's a lot of different ways of doing that. You can contact people about that. This is rewiringamerica.org. That's the IRA calculator. You can see now most of that, unfortunately, it's not as much as I'd like it to be, because a lot of that is not specific costs, but has to do with tax. Basically, they're paying you based on your income tax and what kind of taxable kinds of things you're doing. Rather than, I think it should be more. It's not quite as linearly as it's supposed to be. So, oh, and by the way, Ellen has a program. It's about a 20-minute program on the Inflation Reduction Act, and you can get in contact with her, and she'll come and see you come, or somebody else will come and talk to you a little bit about that Inflation Reduction Act, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. It's not the best thing, but it is a good thing that's going on. All right. Okay. Next slide. I wonder what that was. I saw, yeah, okay. So let's look at what other areas we could look at in terms of, again, reducing these emissions. Fortunately, there's a growing list of local organizations that's forming around the country to take up the challenge to limit greenhouse emissions. Many are involved with faith-based initiatives. So the one that I'm familiar with is the United Church of Gainesville. I don't know if anybody here is a fan of that particular there. I got to raise their hand, okay. They did their, back in September of 2023, they had their climate summit, which was pretty good in terms of that. And their motto was, there is no plan B. I kind of like that. There is no plan B. And that's kind of what you get out. There's no real plan B about these gases. Once they're up there, there is no plan B. And of course, the church has got its own solar panels and doing other kinds of things besides the climate summit. and they have several different activities going on. Now, what about local governments? The two things that I know about, we've got two kinds of local governments. We've got a city and we got the county. The city of Gainesville has a number of committees associated with climate action, and it produced this wonderful lady, Dr. Zhu. Dr. Zhu is her name. She's from, where is she from? She's from Korea, someplace, I'm not sure exactly. But anyway, she's doing a very good job in terms of trying to do something about things in that area. And so you'll see her, you can see her, he'll see her if you go around various kinds of things, what she's doing. Things are pretty good going about that. And then there's the city. I mean, the county. The county is doing so we have the city with Dr. Zhu. We have the county now doing other things. This particular committee, the Alachua County has the Citizen Climate Advisory Committee. And they're looking for members right now, as a matter of fact. If you look up on the web, you can see, hey, we need people to join, come down to and be part of this particular thing. And they're doing a lot of interesting things about that. So there are ways of doing this. And that's part of the reason for talking about it like I am here. And so I want to congratulate everybody here for your concern about this increasingly warming world. So please share. That's what Ellen's doing. She's sharing. Take what she shares, what I say. Share what you learn there. Talk to people. Talk to people. Socialize. Very important to be socializing and talking to people about this. Don't hang it up somewhere and let somebody else do it. You got to do it yourself. And consider doing things to risk this life-changing future. And finally, oh, there it is. My last little note. There it is. Finally, think about the honeybee. Its future is faced by the challenging environment humanity continues to create via a warming world through greenhouse gas emissions. So get your bee fever out, go out and look at those bees, and they're also part of this situation as well. Thank you very much. Now, some people have said, I've done this a couple different times now. I just want to make one little editorial comment. And that is, people said, you didn't say anything about bees. You didn't tell me about bees. Well, that wasn't really I told you at the start it was going to be about bees, but anyway, so that's something. If you want to talk about, we can talk a little bit about bees and see what's going on with them. But nevertheless, that's an issue. So I will give you some information. And there's our beekeeper back there. Raise your hand, Ray. There's our man. Everybody knows the Ray Goldwire, huh? He is the guy at Oak Hammock.
I do have a question. I do have a question
Yes.
about bees, and that is, to what extent is the bee population being damaged, if any, by the increase in temperatures?
Yes. Well, there's no question that they're being affected in a number of different ways. One of the things that I've been doing for years is what is the beekeeping industry involved in? Because guess what? There is a new sort of a domestic animal on the market, on the beat. And what is that domestic animal? That's the honeybee. Honeybee, it turns out, is in fact a domesticated animal. It's cattle or horses or pigs or whatever else. And you've got people that are managing them. And as a consequence, that as part of the issue with this, the bees are in trouble, but they're not in as much trouble as they could be if humans didn't have a sort of a situation where they would be involved in this as well. So that's the issue. That's become an industry, basically. And when people say, oh, the bees are going to go extinct, I say, no, they're not. And they say, why not? I said, because humans ain't going to let them go extinct. This is like, some people are making some good money on bees right now, as in different ways. Yeah.
A honey question.
Honey question.
Honey doesn't seem to spoil at all. It has
Hey.
quite remarkable properties.
Yeah.
How long will it keep? I've heard thousands of years.
That's a
Is
good
that
question.
correct?
Yes, I think that's a good question. You know, yeah, that's a good answer. And it's interesting, the golden age of beekeeping in the 1800s in the United States. First of all, we know now that, of course, that the honeybee is not a native insect in North America. Okay, I bet everybody should know that at least. It came over, like the people, came over from the old world, right? They brought the honeybee with them. And so the honeybee then became actually took over the whole United States in the sense as being a wild animal. And as a consequence, that was what happened there with that. So it is not the honeybee itself is, again, a domesticated animal. And so as a consequence, what was your statement again? Oh yeah, honey. I was trying to get the honey because I was having the so-called golden age of beekeeping was in the 1800s. Now, what happened in the 1800s? Was there refrigeration in the 1800s? What if you wanted to store food somewhere in the 1800s? How would you do that without refrigeration and so on? Well, you used honey. Honey doesn't require refrigeration, and it does last a long, long time in its natural state. And so that's the issue. It does not spoil, generally speaking, and will not spoil for many, many, many years. That's correct. Yes.
What would you like Publix to do with their plastics? It seems like they can either bury it or burn it.
Well, that's a good question. Why don't you ask somebody? When you go to Publix next time, ask them what they're doing with their plastic.
You know, I'd like to weigh in on that for a second.
Okay.
Okay, because there's something that you don't know about to do with those plastic bags and all the plastic film around your cucumbers and the plastic bags that your frozen beans come in that I have just learned about. My synagogue is collecting all that plastic. If you bring it to Shir Shalom or bring it here, because I'll be here for the next 5 Tuesdays, we can turn it into a Trex bench. Trex is made out of smashing those plastic bags into plastic timbers that last forever. So you can now collect plastic, and I will be your collector person and add it. If we get 1,000 pounds of plastic, we get a bench. We're up to about 3 pounds right now because we just started. Well, but look,
A little bit.
that could be an
every little bit.
service project.
Every
We
little
could
bit.
get you a box that you could put your plastic in, and I'll come and collect the big box of plastic. So Winn-Dixie is the intermediary between us and Trex, the company that makes this. Wow, I don't know where they make the Trex. I'm going to guess California. You have to send it, but we get a bench for my synagogue. We'll put oak hammock on it. Okay, sorry to hijack that, but it really is something on my mind to get
Good,
organized.
good. Okay, that's happy to hear about it.
Two quick things. One, thank you for today because climate change is the most important issue that we are facing in the whole globe. So I really appreciate anything that you're bringing to us. Second thing, Okamic collects plastic and recyclables. You cannot believe how much plastic goes into recyclables every single day here. So if there's any way we can support that, we need to talk.
Can you tell us what they actually do with it?
As far as I know, the county picks it up.
Okay.
The county does have a good plastics recycling program. I'm talking about not the bottles, the things you can put in a bin. I'm talking about the film that you just throw in the garbage because I'm talking about everything is wrapped in film. So I'm talking about the garbage plastic that you can't put in recycle.
It would be
And
best though to go to the next step, which is to actually determine what they're actually doing with the plastic.
They wrap it up. If you go to we should do a field trip to the Levita Brown Environmental Center and watch what they do with all of our recycling. I do want to grab that folder for a second. We forgot to show this slide.
We forgot to show us.
Saturday, ice cream and lemonade. This is civic action and climate conversation. That's fun. You don't usually have fun when you're talking about the end of the world as we know it. It's free. And it's being sponsored by Clio Institute and Third Act. Third Act is seniors. We're in the third part of our lives and we want to act. So that's what Third Act is all about. And the idea here is we're going to hear from a county person, a city person, and a Sierra Club person on what's going on right now to help with cooling this area. What are we up to? And we're going to have ice cream and lemonade, and we're going to sign postcards to Environmental Voter Project voters. It's non-political. It's, hey, remember to vote. That's the postcard. Very benign, but it should be fun. So please come on out. And if there's enough of you, I'm guessing maybe Okamic would give you a bus. I'm guessing. Okay, thank you. More questions?
How many people here are riding the Okamic bus? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Riding the Okamic bus? Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be,
yeah.
that's a nice,
It's
that's a nice
carpooling,
possibility.
carpooling.
I don't know where it's going or what's going on with it, but that's something to think about. Yeah.
I do have one last question for you.
Yes.
And it does have to do with the honeybees and heat and the phenology, because that's a fascinating thing to me. You mentioned it in the
Right.
slide. What is happening to the bees that we might see here because it's so hot and it's hot longer and earlier? What's going on here with people who care about bees?
Ray, what do you think? There's the beekeeper. I'm not the beekeeper. He's the beekeeper here.
Well, the answer for me is I really don't know, but I know that the honeybees keep on working, and the heat, the high heat doesn't seem to bother them, up to say 95, 90 or so.
Right. Bees are pretty good about
Yeah.
managing their own temperature. That's something to do very well.
How do they do that?
If you live in Minnesota, or in the old days, when it was cold in Minnesota, where I used to go and play hockey, if you have bees in Minnesota, what was the life cycle of the colony at that time? Is it in the summertime, they created the honey. And then in the wintertime, it was cold and they couldn't fly. They clustered together and created heat. That's called the cluster, the heated cluster. So that's what they learned to do over many millions of years to make sure that they could function in the wintertime. Yeah. So the other way around, what you're talking about here is that, what's going on with, we really don't know. That's the problem. The scientists haven't caught up with the actual reality of what's happening. We don't really know what the bees are doing. But if you leave them alone for a while, they may actually develop something we don't even know about that would help them, pass the situation in terms of global warming. Yeah.
I was curious when you said the honeybee was not in North America, okay, was imported.
Right.
What insect pollinated all the plants in North America before the honeybee?
Well, that's a very good question. And one thing we tell people routinely about pollination and bees particularly is how many species of bees are there out there? Now, the honeybee is one species, Apis mellifera, we know about that. It was brought in by presumably people Spanish or whatever. But turns out if in the aggregate, there are 20,000 species of bees in North America. So some of those are doing that, what we're talking about. It's just people haven't had time or haven't had the will to actually find out exactly what those species are. Yeah.
One more question. Okay. Dr. Sanford? Thank you.
Well, I
Very
hope
much.
so.
Appreciate very, very much.
Again, you got
yeah.
your resident guy back there. Go over and see what you
Yeah.
You want to keep
Just
bees?
see-
You got
yeah.
how many bees you got now? They're going through 5 or 4? Yeah.
Okay, very good.
And they're going through winter here at this point, but it's a pretty hot winter.
We'll see you all next week. Next week, Martha Malone will be speaking on what can you do about climate change. Thank you.